Hi, good evening. Welcome to Neighborhood News. I'm John Sylvia here with Carlos Cesar. Another Tuesday.
It's another Tuesday, and we're back with one more of Neighborhood News. And like we do every week, we like to welcome the Portuguese community. Para aqueles que estão nos escutar através da internet, aqui na América ou até mesmo nos Açores, sejam bem-vindos a mais um programa de sua notícia da sua vizinhança. Hoje estamos de volta com mais um convidado. É terça-feira, 7h30 da noite, e nós voltamos com mais um programa de notícias da sua vizinhança. Se está a ver o nosso programa e não é terça-feira, está a ver um programa repetido, portanto fique sintonizado terça-feira às 7h30 para um novo programa do nosso, da nossa notícias da nossa vizinhança. Eu penso que acontece pela primeira vez nós termos alguém aqui que fala a nossa língua.
Sim, senhor.
Daniel, queres cumprimentar a nossa comunidade portuguesa?
Bem-vindos a todos. Obrigado por eu estar aqui e temos muita coisa para nós falarmos juntos e muitas condições que está estudando aqui na nossa área da cidade de Fall River.
Yep, and that's what's going to happen. So fique connosco e eu tenho certeza que vai gostar.
Yeah.
So for the first time we have our guest.
There you go. You have somebody that you can talk to in Portuguese.
Yes.
Right? Well, welcome, City Councillor Dan Rego.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate being here.
Sure. It's been kind of busy for you lately, right?
It's been more than ever. This term has been a challenging one thus far since November 6th when I was re-elected to the City Council, and it's a tight fiscal year, and we need to be more cognizant than ever into situations that our city is facing.
Yeah. Well, I know you were at the budget hearing. We went to the budget hearing.
Yes.
I didn't stay through the whole thing because it was getting late at that point. But what do you think? It seems like during that meeting, at least this is my perception of it, that they seem to be wanting solutions, but it didn't get to that point. It just seemed like everybody was going around that these are the problems, which we all know the problems were, but to come up with some sort of solution. I know you brought that up at the meeting also.
Yes, I did.
Was that your take too, that, you know, should everybody sit down and brainstorm as to how they're going to come up with this money?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there's in respect to the meeting, I think it was good for the community to actually see their elected officials coming to a room. I wish there were more resolutions than there were vetted problems.
Yeah.
As you just stated, there have been issues that have been vetted either in some sort of a committee or a city council meeting, whether it be the mayor on any program, local program, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, I would have liked to actually seen solutions rather than, you know, vetting our problems that we all know we have. Yeah. And hopefully within the next very near future, within the next month to 2 months, that we can come to some resolutions and solutions to, you know, what direction our city is going in, and more than ever, we need to be very fiscal responsible, and we need to conserve more than ever because we're facing hard financial times.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, it's been years that the City Council has been asking the administration, please give us the budget before the day that we need to sign it. I think that's the intent. That's what we're trying to do, but I don't think it's working because the meeting was done. We don't have no concrete numbers, so it's just numbers up on the air, and that's exactly what happens when they're getting prepared to present the City Council with a budget. Yeah. So I don't see any difference. It's just instead of being in top of the desk, their desks, it's in front of everybody. So everybody's saying now how the numbers being done, yeah, which they don't know exactly what else is being done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they came up with a few solutions. I mean, I think the pay-as-you-throw, they said that could create 2.5 million. So I think I'd like to probably see more of those solutions as to how we can cut it. But, you know, time will tell, I guess. It's just, you know, there weren't too many out there. And I think every year, the school department, no matter what, there's always been talk, we got to cut, we got to cut, we got to cut. And, you know, say what you want, you know, as to how the school department is run. I know everybody has a different opinion, but I look at the graduation rate. When I went to Durfee in the early 80s, we had a graduation rate of 50%. I remember going in there as a freshman in the auditorium and they said, look around, half these people won't be here. And it's true. I had started out with 1,200 kids. We had 6 when I graduated. So they have gone up. I think they're at a 75% graduation rate, which I think is almost as good as is Westport. But you know, we got to look at this stuff. We all know that there's over 30 kids in the elementary schools, very hard to handle. So, I mean, there are certain areas, I think, God, if we can't support schools, fire, and police, and trash, you know, Jesus. I mean, those are the basic, right?
Where do we stand?
Yeah,
You bring up a very good point, John, when it comes to our education. And as an example, I am in the construction field. As many know, I am a labor leader in the community, and I represent carpenters. That's my day job. That's what I do all day long. And what I do is I try to find jobs for my guys. And right now, I currently have 110 men out of work. Okay, and here we are in April. With that said, in reflection of education, at one point in time, we had a room with about 180 to 200 union delegates that were sitting in a room. What that is just probably 4 or 5 individuals that represent each local that they represent. So you have delegates. And the question came up to education and why is the education rate rising? Because at the end of the day, when one of my superiors said, of all of you here that are carpenters swinging a hammer, how many of your kids are going to be going into the trade that you actually do, that you do? Yeah. And ironically, out of the 180 some men that were there and women that were there, only 2 individuals stood up and said, my son wants to be a carpenter. Yeah. And everybody else said, well, how many of you are sending your kids off to college and want them to seek another alternative way of making a living? And that's exactly what happened. Yeah. Almost everybody in the room stood up. So we as human beings, as a society, we recognize that the key to success in this country, especially being of immigrant descent like Carlos and I and yourself, but I'm first generation and Carlos is first generation, and we come here and we understand that the key to life here in the United States is to invest in our children, in our community. That's why I am so, when I vote on an issue, the kids are at the top of my list because they are our future. We need to invest. In 1934, FDR, Franklin D. Roosevelt, said the last place that we should economize is in the education of our youth. And I stand by that. Yeah. So I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah, it's just, you know, and this has been going on. You know, you follow this stuff before. This has been going on for 30, 40 years. And it's just, I don't know how we can't get this together and move on and just, you know, not worry about this basics. I mean, in your household, I take it as that way. If you can't afford something, or, you know, you can't afford your mortgage, what do? You do one of 2 things. If you're working, you get another job, or number 2, you cut out all these other things. So, you know, I would hope that they could come to that concession that, look, the party's over, it's everywhere. Everywhere, no matter where you were. You know, when I started working for the feds 30 years ago, it was, you know, nobody wanted to work for the government because they didn't pay you. Now, it's basically everybody wants to stay there because there's nothing out there.
And it's in job security.
And it's job security, but
At that point in time, there still isn't.
There still is, but you know what? It's not. You know, I feel bad for the kids coming up because I don't feel that it's something that you can stay somewhere because you never know. They might close a facility down. They might put it here, there, or everywhere. So nothing's a sure thing anymore, and that's why I feel bad for the kids that are coming up. It's not an easy thing, but I think people have to come to that realization with Kennedy. You know, Kennedy said back during his thing, I was a kid then, you guys were kids too, that what do you want to do for your country? So I think that I wish people would start thinking about what can we do here instead of taking. You know, and that's just, you know, I think that's, to get over that, I don't know what we can do, because there's, you know, there's just a minority of people that are screaming all the time about this, and I don't know how you can out-scream the majority.
Well, as one of your city councilors, I take my position as an elected official very seriously, and I took an oath, and that oath was to represent the residents of this city with the utmost respect, honest, and with them at the forefront. At the end of the day, I want to spend their money frugally, and I want to spend mine according to my needs. With that said, as a community, we need to be fiscally responsible. We as elected leaders that the people elect, okay, need to be fiscal responsible. Spend within your means. In my 2 years, this is my second term as a city councilor, I have witnessed numerous times of money being spent foolishly. And why do I say that? Is because when you are in dire need, when you're in dire straits, when somebody gives you a hand up, such as the federal government gave to our firefighters, they gave us a hand up, not a handout. And instead of us taking that hand up and capitalizing on that time, okay, which 4 years is a very long time to capitalize on a hand up. And we didn't, we failed, okay? And as I don't want to put blame onto anybody, but at the end of the day, we have what we call a financial team, okay, that is run by the mayor. The city council, what we do on the city council is we watch the spending. We make sure that the spending is being spent in a way that is in the best interest of the city and of the residents. We are only limited to what we can do at the time. And I'll give you a for instance. Job creation at administrative levels. There are jobs created that the city council doesn't even know about. Sometimes we walk into the administration's office and we see new faces. Sometimes we walk into other departments, whether it be whatever department it is, and I'm not going to specifically name one, but various departments that we see, well, wow, where did that job come from? We just laid off 2, 3 other people. Now there was one person doing that job, now there's 3. This is what I'm talking about when I say we need to be fiscally responsible and spend within our means. Government has grown. You know, I am a Democrat, okay, but at the same time, I'm a conservative at heart because we have to be conscientious about the money that we spend. We have got to, in all honesty, we got to plan for tomorrow. Sometimes doing with less now provides a better tomorrow, not only for our kids, but for the elderly folks in the community that are living paycheck to paycheck with uncontrollable issues such as Medicare going up, medications going up. And the last thing they want is for taxes to go up. So when we say to be fiscally responsible, we need to make sure that the administration is on board along with the city council. The city council, and I am not defending the city council because at the end of the day, we do approve the budget or disapprove the budget that is presented before us. I have gone on record, and with my votes, I have voted against the last 2 budgets that came with tax raises because of my questions and my concerns not being met. Job creation, raises giving, all of this come under one blanket, and at the end of the day, it affects you, yourself, Carlos, and me in the community, and that's in regard to taxes.
Yeah, well, you know, and that's something that I wonder, can't the city council request to get everybody that's hired? Because I think, you know, the ABCs, I work in HR, the ABCs of that are, if you're having fiscal problems, you immediately put in a hiring freeze. Why are you going to bring people on if you have to lay people off? So I think that right there, I don't know why it hasn't been instituted to have that. And I think it would be nice that if the city could provide everybody that's been hired for the last 6 months.
Absolutely, you know? And I totally agree with that. And to your point, that is one of my questions that I have. And I said it the other night. I want to see who was hired, what jobs were created. I want to know how much money these individuals are getting, and why was that job creation necessary? A situation came up on one of the local radio stations. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention the radio station, but I did the noon hour with Barry Richards on WSAR, and he said, "Okay, Dan, since you're so passionate about, you know, raises and giving out raises and being fiscally responsible, let's just say we took back all the raises that were given, and let's bring it to the tune of $250,000 or $300,000. He said, "That's really not big money, but what do you do with that money?" I think I came out with a real good answer. Well, now that the chief of police is asking us for $350,000 for vehicles, I think that money would soon fit for at least 8 vehicles at that time. And this is what I mean by thinking about tomorrow planning. The humongous issue that I also have is I feel bad for the department heads of our city, and I'm going to tell you why. We have Terry Sullivan who comes before us, and he's Director of Public Utilities. We also have Ken Pacheco that comes before us, and he's the Director of Department of Public Works, okay, and so on and so forth. What I have noticed is throughout the years, in order for mayors to get reelected, John, okay, what do? They don't want to raise taxes and fees. I don't like to raise taxes and fees. And I'm sure you or yourself would not like to raise taxes and fees. But hear this analogy. Let's just say we have to raise a tax hike of 2.5%. So there has been some years where they haven't, but mostly for the most part, they have. But when you come to Terry Sullivan's situation in his department, there has been no hike in water and sewer for the last 3 years, okay? Now, what happens? Bam, we get hit hard with a humongous 100% tax hike. And I'm gonna use the meter fee as an example. My question to Terry was, why hasn't it been that every single year you raise 5 cents? 5 cents per quarter. 5 cents per quarter. In all reality, we lose more pennies in our car seats than 5 cents per quarter. So if you were to raise 5 cents per quarter every year, the human perspective on it is you don't feel the blow. You get accustomed to it. So I rather see small increments of fees being raised every single year than getting hit hard with either 100% fee on a situation or an override Proposition 2.5, which is in question, by the way, that I am adamantly opposed to. But at the end of the day, it's why are we not being fiscally responsible? We all know that gas goes up, electric goes up, gasoline, healthcare goes up, our vehicles, our cars, car expenses, tire, everything goes up, but it goes up in increments. And if we have been doing that since way before my time and probably before your, if we have been doing that and having that mentality, then I think the blow would be a lot softer, and we would have and we would be fiscally responsible because we would know how to budget for the following year.
But and see, Dan, what you're talking about with that, I don't blame anybody that's in office. I blame the people. Because this mayor is probably the only one that's been able to raise taxes and people don't flip out. I hear you see they do, but Lambert, I remember, would not raise anything if it was an election year, and same with Carrera. He wouldn't, you know what I mean? All these past people would not do that because it was a death sentence.
To my point,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, so I blame the people complaining about that because you know what? Now we're in this situation where things weren't maintained. We got these new schools. How are they going to maintain them? There's no money, no maintenance money in there to maintain these things. And it's, I blame everybody too here. It's not only you guys, you're only 10 people, or, you know what I mean, between the mayor and you, it's 10 people. I blame the citizens for not saying, why,
New Bedford has a $30 million difference in their budget than the city of Fall River.
Oh.
They have more police officers than the city of Fall River, and they have less roads to track, okay? We always say, you always heard administrators come before us, well, I did a comparison to this city, I did a comparison to that city, I did a comparison to this city. Yeah. Well, you know something, and I will say it to the Fall River public, if we were, as elected officials, to say, we are gonna go up to the same exact standard as New Bedford, we would have to raise taxes in excess of 10 to 15%.
Yeah.
And then we would be compatible. So that compatibility, I don't like that too much because we cannot compare ourselves because we're at a much lower tax rate. And why? Because of what you just said, John.
Yeah.
Mayor after mayor after mayor just simply refuse to raise taxes in small increments just for purpose of getting reelected. I honestly believe in my heart of hearts, okay, being of Portuguese descent, and the city of Fall River, 80% of us are mainly Portuguese. But I would beg to differ that if I went to a whole host of residents and said to them, we need to raise your taxes, here's why. Because if we don't, we're gonna have to lay off 60 firefighters. We need to raise your taxes. How do you feel about that? I've gotten a lot of reception from the residents to say, well, if I knew that money was strictly going for that purpose, absolutely. So I said it on WSAR in the noon hour about a week and a half ago. I said, I will not be in favor of voting for a tax increase of 2.5% unless, okay, we look at everything else in the budget. We look at all the jobs that were created, all the raises that were given, analyze that situation, and earmark this money specifically for our needs, not our wants. And our needs are fire, police, DPW, and most importantly, that I consider education for our children.
No, I agree. I agree. And I think people are receptive to that because the CPA passed, which we were the only city, I think, because people knew that money is going to go toward park improvements and stuff like that. So it's funny, a couple of years ago, there was a task force for the police to try to see if we could get more numbers up. And that was brought up at the meeting, that could we just raise taxes, say we need 5 police officers, and that costs $400,000. Could we just raise taxes for that? And that's the only place that money could go. And they were looking at it, and I think what it ended up being is that we'd have to put it on the ballot somehow. And I, never really heard.
I think nobody will go against raising money for whatever they see a need.
Yeah.
Because every weekend we have a fundraiser in our city. Every weekend we have a fundraiser, and it's people there.
Sure.
It's because people care about, but they know they are bringing that dollar, and that dollar is going to be spent in there.
Absolutely.
So what's happening, what's going on with the city is they're confused. I mean, people are confused because we're going to raise money to fix bathrooms, and then bathrooms not done, and the money's gone. So people get confused. So and Portuguese people are like this. You rob me once, you don't rob me twice.
Exactly.
Right? That's a
good analogy, but I think that's universal with all the
exactly.
That's anybody.
Exactly. But I just translated from Portuguese. But that's exactly our mentality. our community, it's there when we go to them and we need your money, and that's what we need for. They are there.
Yeah.
But when it comes to city, they always have to think twice
Yep.
before they give the money.
Sure.
And they just give it because they obligated to give, not because they want to will to give it. Because it's a difference when I demand $1 from you, and when I ask you for money, you're going to give me $2. You're going to give me double than whatever I need.
That's right.
Because it's like I will give you what I think I can give you to support that project. Okay, when we just and they got mad and I got mad when we opened the bill and it's there and it's not even specified there what the money is. Just have the total of the money they want from me, you know. And that I approached the city council with that on my water bill. Was a charge of $8 there that until today nobody explained to me what those $8 for.
Right.
But it's there.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure if you go down and talk to Terry Sullivan, he will explain to you. At the with the average homeowner, the average person out here in the city of Fall River or any community, okay, they pay a tax. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, we want to see a result. Yep. Now, here is the dilemma here in the city of Fall River that I have witnessed. And I have been a part of, and like you as well. With that said, you take our streets. Our streets are in the worst condition that I've ever seen in the history of all the years that I've lived here in the city of Fall River. Our sidewalks at equal amount. We are in need of total repair infrastructure. That is the face of what I'm getting at. Then we have our underground infrastructure that has been ignored for the last at least 50 to 100 years. And I don't care what anybody says to me, we have not invested in our infrastructure. And this is, and why do I say that? Is because this is why we have the storm water fee. Yeah. Mm-hmm. If we were fiscally responsible from get-go, from the time of 40 years ago, 50 years ago, if mayors were planning for tomorrow, we would have this.
We're going to talk about that next week, Dan, because Dan's going to be a guest next week.
So great. Then thank you for coming.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
And
Appreciate
we are definitely counting with you for next week.
Absolutely.
And it's the end of one
it.
more show.
Yep.
So see you guys in a week.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Thank you very much.
Yeah.